I just saw the movie Dust Bunny, and I loved it, and I loved a visual effect that they used in it, which was a creature crawling under the floorboards and just pushing them up in a slightly cartoonish manner. And so I decided to see if I could replicate that in Unreal, and using motion design, as you can see here, I pulled off an effect that I'm pretty happy with. This one with hex tiles is very subtle and creepy, and this one's a little bit bigger. Alright, I'm going to show you how to do this. First of all, you're going to want to enable the motion design plugin. I'm in 5.7, so if you're using a different version, I apologize if the UI for it has changed. I'm going to create a new level, control space to bring up the content browser, and I'll call it motion underscore tutorial map. Open that up, and I need to save the map that I created. And under window, I'm going to do the environmental light mixer and just create all of these base lights just to get a nice lit working space. Go into motion design from the drop down under selection mode, create a cloner, and I'll start off with the honeycomb, the hex pattern. If you're just working with squares or rectangles, you can use the grid instead. Honeycomb, and just click to place that. And you can see here that everything's a little off and rotated, so to fix that, on the cloner, you can just zero out the rotation, and on the clone static mesh actor underneath it, zero out the rotation there as well. Now on that static mesh actor, I'm going to select my mesh. It's just called SM_hex. And it starts off with the default cloner material. I'm just going to reset that back to the material that I've set up. And there we go. We've got my hex tiles set up. Now we need to push these tiles together. If you scroll down to the cloner, you can find the layout section. It's set to honeycomb on an XY plane. The height offset 0.5, that offsets the center tiles. So if you change it around, you can see them move. That's just every other tile. I need to shrink down the height spacing until the objects are right next to each other, and then the width spacing until they're right next to each other. And I'm just going to set it to a value that I tested earlier. There we go. And now that I have my tile pattern, let's increase this to 20 by 20. Now we have a nice working surface. Next up, we need to create our effector. So you can scroll down and click Create Linked Effector, and that creates a new effector object. The mode is set to offset by default, and that's one of the things that we can use. Offset of 50. If I drag this effector on down, you can see here that it's pushing the tiles away in much the same pattern that I demoed earlier. You can also use push. Offset seems to offset from the base location. Push seems to push from the effector location. So here, as I'm pushing, you can see that the X, Y, and Z are all pushing out. I can change it, though, to free push, 0, 0, and then 100, and now it's just pushing upwards. The next step we want to use is target. Target is going to let the tiles tilt to face our effector, which is going to give the effect of objects on the outside. As they get lifted up, they'll also tilt outwards as though they're being lifted up from their inside edge. So for that, we'll use target. And if you look at the effector and, well, the effect of the effector, as I bring it up here, let me demo what's going on. So here we go. You can see here that this point on each of these, the rightmost point in this case, is facing the effector. And that's not the right effect. What I want is for the top, or rather the bottom, the flat side bottom of the tile, to be facing the effector. And that way, as I come underneath it, all of the objects will face the effector, which means they'll tilt outwards. Their top will tilt outwards away from the effector. And that is what we want to see. Let me demo exactly how we can correct this and how you can correct this on your own mesh if you're not sure which way is which. You can see here that the x-axis which is that point we're looking at, is facing forward. We need to rotate it so that the z-axis, or rather the negative z-axis, is facing forward. So if I hit E for rotation mode, I just want to lift it up so that the bottom is facing forward. Just like that. And if I hit W, I can see that the bottom is facing forward. Okay, so let's find out what rotation that is. That is 90 degrees. In the cloner, you can set the global rotation to 90 degrees, and now they're all up on their side. And if I look at how the effector's working, they are all facing the effector in the way that I want to see. But they're on their side. So to correct this, there's two steps. First off, in the cloner, let's rotate it so that this side is facing downwards. Let's just crank it over by negative 90 degrees. And now it's a vertical plane, and we want it to be a flat plane. So if I scroll down here to the layout again, the plane is set in XY, but we're no longer using the X plane. We're using the YZ plane. So set it to YZ, and now it's a little closer, but these are rotated incorrectly. But you can see here that the effect is starting to look correct. So let's fix this rotation. We need to basically rotate them 90 degrees, and if I click on my base object here, rotate it 90 degrees, and I can look at what rotation that is, 90, 0, 90. So on the cloner again, let's click on the cloner, and on the global rotation, 90, 0, 90, and there we go. It's exactly how I want it. So now what we need to do is combine multiple effects. We need this rotation combined with the lifting. So I'm just going to duplicate this effector, and the duplicated one I'm going to call effector target, and I'm going to make it a child of the other effector so that I can just move one effector and they both move. This one I'll call effector-push. And if I scroll down on it, I can change the mode to push, and I'm pushing it 100, but that's actually pulling it. It's not quite right. So let's change that to negative 100, and now it's pushing it. All right, so one thing to point out, as the push gets closer, centered to the cloner, it starts to send the top tiles very far up. Offset does not do that. So same effect, offset actually just caps out at the top. So a combination of push and offset seems to work together pretty well. I start with push as the basis, and then I tweak it with offset. So I've also found that modifying the easing allows me to create a more pleasing effect. What I'm looking for is, as I drag this on over, the edge tiles here, do I see them go down, right, like this, before they lift up? If these were actually on the ground, there would be no space for them to go down, so I don't want that to happen. I just want them to lift up. So I've found that the easing for the push, if I set that to in sign and the target to out quad, and really you just have to play around with these and test it out and find out what works best for your individual mesh. Now here I can lower this on down and try moving it on around, and there we go, that's pretty close. There's a little oddness here around the top tile, so I can kind of push out these edge tiles a little bit by duplicating this push effector and making it effector offset, and parenting that one as well. And I'll change this to offset, and it doesn't need to do much, just 008, and that kind of offsets the extra push from the push and smooths everything out. And there we go. We have a nice, basic, small effect. So now let's take a look at how to do a fishbone pattern, like my other demo. We'll change the cloned object to this wood floor I have. This wood floor is 100 by 25, so its length is 4 times its width. And this honeycomb pattern is not right, so let's change that pattern on the cloner. If I scroll up to grid, and its default is 3 by 3 by 3. Let's make it, well, it's already rotated, so we want to keep the same sort of global rotation, 90, 0, 90, and negative 90. So we're not using the x-axis at all, and there we go. And we can set the spacing on down. X spacing is irrelevant. Y spacing we can make a little closer. Z spacing, well, it's hard to see with this effector here. There we go. Back to the cloner. Let's crank it up to, I don't know, 10 by 3. Let's do 20 by 6. So this is just a flat pattern, which isn't what I was looking at. We're going to add a little extra rotation to this, and we can do that back under the cloner. Global rotation 45 degrees to one way, and that is more like what I was showing initially. Next up, we need to move the spacing even further apart. And now we can duplicate this cloner. And we need to change its clone object. Reset that material and change it to plank. Yep. Wood. SM wood floor. There we go. And now under its settings, cloner, 0, negative 90, 90, 45, 90. Let's drag this off to the side, and let's actually correct by default. If it wasn't correct, you could just move it to negative 45 instead of 45, but there we go. It seems to be right by default. And now we just move these till they sync up. You can kind of try to center it, and then if you select both of them, you can crank down the spacing Z. Let's do 140, a little too much, 145, 150, 155 is a little far. So let's set them to 141.5, and the Y spacing will be 28. And now if I move it a little to the side, there we go. It's good enough as a floor. And now we can move the effector on around and see that pushing under the floorboards effect. And again, you can tweak the effector, the easing, etc. There you go. I hope you enjoy.